الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد المرسلين وخاتم النبيين ورحمة للعالمين وصلى الله على آله الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أوصيكم عباد الله بتقوى الله. Most of the Friday khutbahs that we have from our Imams, after the introductory part where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is praised, and then there is a prayer for the blessings on the Prophet and his family, the first advice that we see is the issue of Taqwa Allah, to acquire the Taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this concept of Taqwa is a recurring theme in the Quran, as well as in the sayings of the Prophet and our Imams. You will see even in Nahyu Balagha, probably I haven't done the calculation in that way by looking at the word search, but probably the most used word would be Taqwa, or its the words derived from it. Even in Quran, if you see right in the beginning, when it comes to the issue of the muttaqeen, those who have taqwa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this book is the guidance for them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, Dhalika al-Kitab, La Rayba Fi, Hudan lil Muttaqeen. That this book is a guidance for the people who have taqwa. If you look at the end, Quran's describes the concept of Jannah. There it says, Uzlifatil Jannah lil Muttaqeen. The Jannah has been prepared. It had been decorated for the Muttaqeen. So Quran is a guidance for the Muttaqeen. Jannah is being decorated for the Muttaqeen. And 3 places in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term وَالْآقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, means the end result of your life for those who are looking for the good end result. وَالْآقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ, the eventual victory would be for the muttaqeen. In one place, 3 places he uses the same term, وَالْآقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. In one place he says وَالْآقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Doesn't describe the individuals with taqwa. He says taqwa itself, وَالْآقِبَةُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Taqwa is the basis of that eventual good result that we look for. And so this is a very important issue that we have to again and again think about it. The word taqwa itself, has different shades and meanings. But the best way to explain, which would cover all, is the issue of consciousness of Allah's presence at all times. And if we have taqwa at that level, then taqwa becomes a protection for us. It becomes hirz, as Amir al-Mu'minin uses the term. Or he sometimes says, at-taqwa junnah. That taqwa is actually a shield which protects you from committing sins. And this is only when we have taqwa in that meaning of having the consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times, wherever we are, whatever we are doing. If that consciousness would be there, you look at the story of Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam in Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the term that when he wara'a burhana rabbi, he saw the evidence It doesn't mean something came right in front to him, but that consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at every moment basically becomes kind of a barrier. And when that becomes on 100% level, this is where we talk about the gift of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in form of infallibility, which is not acquired, rather it is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this is just the preamble about what I would like to talk about. The taqwa is there, essentials for us all the time. But again, when we talk about taqwa, in the writings of our ulama, they divide it in different levels of life. And they say the most difficult way of the taqwa is taqwa al-lisan. The exercising taqwa regarding our tongue. It's not about testing the food, whether it's halal or haram. Taqwa of lisan is nothing about testing the food, it is about how we use it. The words which come out from it. Whether when we utter things and we say things, whether taqwa is there or not. And this is the most difficult, dimension of taqwa. Just one or two hadiths on this issue. One is from, again, is Shaykh Saduq, quoting from his sanad, going all the way to our sixth Imam, who quotes his forefathers, going to Amir al-Mu'mineen, who quotes from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. It's a long passage of hadith where just two sentences from there, where the Prophet says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ya Ali, Man khafa an-nasu lisanahu, fahuwa min ahli an-nar. Look at the strong wordings Rasulullah is using here. He says, the person whom people fear because of his tongue, fahuwa min ahli an-nar, he is from the people of the fire. So sometimes, say, nobody dare touch me. But is that because of the respect they have for you, or is it because they are afraid of the tongue? Then he right and left, nothing comes out but bad. So they say, rather stay away from this fellow. And this is where Rasulullah is saying, Man khafa an-nas lisanuhu. The person from whose tongue people are afraid, fahuwa min ahli an-nar. Then he says, Ya Ali, sharru an-nas man akramahu an-nas ittiqa fuhshihi wa radd sharrihi. The worst of the people is somebody where people respect him in order to avoid his abusive language and to stay away from his shar and evil. Another hadith which is very interesting from our fourth Imam, Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. And now he is talking on a symbolic level here. Just as we get up in the morning, we see one another. In English you would say, good morning. Even various limbs of our body, when this day starts, they greet one another. And Imam says, إن لسان ابن آدم يشرف على جميع جوارحه كل صباح. Every day in the morning, the tongue also, meets various limbs of the body, and it says, كيف أصبحتم? How was your morning? And all the limbs of the body responding to this, good question from the tongue, they say, بخير إن تركتنا. We are okay as long as you keep away from us. So the rest of the body is afraid of the tongue, because they say, if you leave us alone, we will be okay. يقولون Allah Allah فينا. They say to the tongue, we ask you in the name of Allah, think about us. Because they say, إنما نثاب ونعاقب بك. because we will be rewarded or we will be punished because of you. And so when we talk about this taqwa of lisan and tongue, this is a very important issue. It falls into human psychology here. That when we talk about consciousness of Allah's presence in our life, the most important issue is that before we say anything, think about it. That there is somebody who is listening, and he is going to reward or punish us according to what we say. Just last night in the Thursday night Majlis, I had mentioned the moral dimension or the definition of the word Muslim. And the Prophet says very clearly, a Muslim is somebody from whose hand and tongue others are, secure. And so let us live by that moral demand of being a Muslim. Let us be careful in how we talk to one another, because that is the essence of being a true Muslim in the eyes of Rasulullah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase our tawfiqat and give us this tawfiq for the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In ahsan al-hadith, kitab Allah al-aziz, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحليم الكريم غافر الذنب وقابل التوب وهو الغفور الرحيم ونشهد أن لا إله إلا هو العطوف للعباد بجوده والعواد على المذنبين بحلمه ونشهد أن محمدا نبيه وحبيبه سيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين ورحمة للعالمين صلى الله عليه وآله الداعين إلى سبيل الله بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة قادة الأمم وأولياء النعمة ومعدن الرحمة أوصيكم عباد الله بالتوبة عما سلف من ذنوبكم. Talking about this psychological issue of taqwa al-lisan, Surah Al-Hujurat gives us very important message. This is surah number 49 of the Quran. It's a surah which is almost entirely dealing with the issue of moral and ethical rights that Muslims have towards one another, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the meaning of brotherhood. What does it mean? It's not just a name. There are implications in that concept of ukhuwa. And then he lists few things. Interestingly, this issue of tongue is there as one of the important items when it comes to the rights that mu'mineen have towards one another. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala especially singles out the issue of ghaybat. When we talk about the issue of ghaybat here, backbiting, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used the example is the most horrific symbolism ever used in the Quran. Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا يَقْتَ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضُ, that one among you should not backbite the other, shouldn't do ghibat. أَيُحِبُّ, then he asked this question, أَيُحِبُّ أَحَدُكُمْ أَنْ يَأْكُلَ لَحْمَ أَخِيهِ مَيْتًا, does anyone among you like to bite on the flesh of his dead brother? فَكَرَحْتُمُوهُ, Allah gives the answer. He says, no, you don't like it, you dislike that. Why would you do that? But then he's saying backbiting is same thing. You come to know a secret weakness of someone concealed, and then you expose that person in his absence. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's just like you're biting on the flesh of your dead brother who doesn't have the ability to respond back or defend himself. فَكَرَحْتُمُوهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says you dislike it. And so this is probably the most horrific symbolism Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used just to, make us realize the importance of ghibat in that sense. And that is actually just the symptom and manifestation of something which is inside. Because when you talk about ghibat is not the actual problem, it's just the manifestation of something else which is known as su'ul dhann. To be of suspicious nature all the time. And that's why you will see, before this sentence about la yaghtab ba'dukum ba'dha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, ishtanibu kathiran min al-dhann. Refrain from most of these suspicious thoughts, inna ba'd al-dhanni ithmun, because some of these suspicious thoughts are sin. وَلَا تَجَسَّسُوا, and do not spy. Do not try to dig out things about people. And then it says, وَلَا يَغْتَبْ, and do not backbite one another. And so the backbiting is the end result of su'uz zann and then tajassus. And this is where we have to realize that, we cannot control our thoughts. Su'uz zann cannot be prevented. But it becomes a sin when we act it out. And that happens because, people have that nature. Whenever something happens, people think about it, one way or another. And this is where we have to work on that first stage. But if it is, acted out, when it comes to the level of tajassus, digging out things, and once we find something, it doesn't stay inside. Even if you want to keep it down, it wants to come out. And that is where ghibat starts. And this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that yes, refrain from most of the suspicions because some of them are sinful. And so if you look at the statement from the Prophet himself, he says there are certain things which are not right for a mu'min, and one of them is the issue of su'ul dhann. And he says, how do you deal with it? He says, فَمَخْرُجُهُ مِنْ سُوءِ الظَّنِّ أَنْ لَا يُحَقِّقَهُ. You should not make it materialize. It should not be actualized by your action. So even if you have suspicion about something, without any evidence, without anything like that, keep it in your control. And this is where Amir al-Mu'mineen says in one of his statements, ذَعْ أَمْرَ أَخِيكَ عَلَى أَحْسَنِهِ حَتَّى يَأْتِيكَ مَا يُقَلِّبُكَ مِنْهُ. That when you look at an issue, an action of your brother in faith, and if there's two possibilities, positive and negative, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, consider it to be positive until you get evidence to change your thought about it. And do not look at the words of your brother always in the negative sense. If you can find a positive meaning of what he has said, that is what you should take. And so this positive thinking is very important, and that's actually the key to this whole issue of backbiting and ghibat. When we talk about ghibat, that's the end result. And we have to work on a mental level. Let me end with the example which I have used it many times, but I think we need to go back sometimes to the madrasa. When we were still in, lower grades in the madrasa, one of the things we learn is the list of najasat and mutahhirat. Najasat are those elements which we consider to be najis. Mutahhirat are the methods by which you can purify a najis element. Water is one of the most common one. But in that list, there is something known as ghaybat-e-Muslim. Ghaybat-e-Muslim, we know about the ghaybat of the Imam. But what does this mean? Probably it's never used in our lifetime. But it is there in that list for us to learn. about the issue of positive thinking. Ghaybat a Muslim is absence of a Muslim. What does it mean? Go back to your madrasa books and look at it. What it means is that if you saw a Muslim, let's say his shirt becomes najis while you were there. Something najis came on it. Then you see him next day in the same masjid wearing the same shirt. What do I do? Do I go to him and say, you know, you're wearing the same shirt which was najis yesterday? Get out from here? Huh? Or would you bring another kanz or something, you know, and put this on? Because this is a masjid, you can't come in with najis clothes. The Sharia says, ghaybat a Muslim. That fellow was absent from your sight for that long that he could have washed it, purified it, and then he came. If that was enough time for him to purify it, then you see him with the same shirt. Ghaybat a Muslim gives you that guidance. You assume that to be pak now. This is the meaning of, positive thinking when we look at, one another. So that simple mas'ala that we learn in the list of mutahirat is there to give us this, way of thinking that we should be positive when we look at one another. Salawat. Families have been destroyed because of suspicion. Business partnerships have gone down. Communities have tensions. And on the world level also, there is suspicion on everything. If a friend does something, everything is okay. If somebody else does anything, you always look at the most negative of the scenarios. And so this is a problem at all levels. At least on our personal level, let's work on it. To start from the mental attitude so that we can deal, with this important command that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in Surah Hujurat. After all, we are Shi'atu Ali. And Ali is Amirul Mu'mineen, Imamul Muttaqeen. اللهم صل على سيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وعلى إمام المتقين وأمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب صلوات الله عليه وعلى سيدة نساء العالمين سيدتنا فاطمة بنت رسول الله صلوات الله عليها وعلى سيد الشباب أهل الجنة الحسن المجتبى والحسين الشهيد بكربلاء عليهم الصلاة والسلام وعلى أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي عليهم الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على مولانا الحجة بن الحسن صاحب العصر والزمان ماحي آثار البدء والطغيان حادم أمنية الشرك والنفاق حاصد فلول البغي والشقاق صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آبائه الكرام ما اتصلت الليالي والأيام. اللهم عجل فرج وسهل مخرج واكحل ناظرنا بنظرة منا إليه واجعلنا من المستشهدين بين يديه. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. اللهم صل